Hi, I'm Lisa Fader, and this is a short class that I'm calling Yoga Basics. And I'll go over a few things that are helpful to know, whether it's your first time taking a yoga practice or whether you've been practicing for a long time. And we'll go through some terms and some breath work, just things that'll be helpful when you do get started with your practice. So I'm going to go back to my mat now, and we'll get started. Typically, when you come to a yoga class, you will start out seated. That's not always the case, but we're going to do that today. And typically you'll sit in a position called Sukhasana, which means a seat of ease. For some people, it's fine to sit with the legs crossed. I have one leg in front of the opposite thigh and the other foot in front of the opposite shin. That helps me get my knees down. If your knees are way up here, if your hips are tight, and that happens a lot, you can elevate your hips. And you'll see I have a blanket right here. You can sit up on a blanket, make yourself more comfortable. It may be that there's no way to sit comfortably like this for a while. You could use blocks or books under your legs. That might be helpful. You could sit on your heels or extend your legs. You could find another way to sit. So as you come into your practice, the most important thing is for you to take care of yourself and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position that will hurt you, right? That would be exactly what we don't want to have happen in a yoga practice. But typically you'll sit here, it's called Sukhasana. If you don't have blocks at home, you could use books that are of more or less equal size, right? Just this will help when we get into the practice to help lift the floor up to you if you're a little bit tight. These are yoga books, but you don't have to necessarily use yoga books. We won't be reading them in class. So you might want a blanket, and if you don't have a yoga blanket, you can use a towel, blocks or books, and then it's often used, often in classes we use a yoga strap. This one's rolled up. If you don't have a strap at home, you could just use a robe tie or a scarf or a belt. So there's lots of ways to get what you need to practice at home. So let's come back and get started. Just finding that comfortable seat, shoulders down, and see if you can allow the back to lengthen. And it may be, if you're used to sitting at a desk all day, that your shoulders round forward. Just do your best to put yourself in a comfortable position, because when we arrive at the practice, we give ourselves just a few moments to settle in. We usually do that by focusing on the breath. And the breath is this great go-to in our practice because it's always happening and it's happening real time. So it helps to bring you into the present moment. And when we breathe in our yoga practice, we inhale through the nose if you're not congested, through the mouth if you are, and we fill the body with the breath. So let's just check that we're all breathing in a way that is helpful, and that when we inhale, we really do fill the body with the breath. Some of us will be doing some reverse breathing, and it'll take some getting used to filling the body with the breath. So bringing the breath in through the nose, both nostrils, and just let it draw down the throat. You might feel it. Let it lift the heart. It's going to come in and stretch you and open you. Let it expand the rib cage and stretch the belly. And then when you exhale, the breath leaves the body and the belly relaxes and the ribs hug you and the heart melts back. Hands can be anywhere you'd like to start. Sometimes palms face up indicates that you're open to the practice. Some practices start with thumb and index finger together. You might have seen this before. This is called Gyan Mudra, and it means the knowledge seal. It just connects you inward to your own guidance. So just follow the breath for a few rounds, and when you inhale, expand the body. When you exhale, soften and relax the body. And as you continue to follow the breath, I'll share a little bit more here. Yoga, the word yoga means union. And it's described in different texts in different ways. So you might think, and many teachers have said, it's the union between the mind and the body, or the breath and movement. To me, it's the union of all things in harmony, which puts us in the flow of the universe. And we feel at ease and connected. So it's the union of it all. That yoga means union. And there are lots of books of philosophy about yoga. One of them is called the Yoga Sutras. Keep breathing here. And the second of the Yoga Sutras really, for me, sums it all up. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. So yoga is stopping your thoughts and allowing you to get a little bit of perspective between you and your thoughts. So it helps us to understand the mind rather than be controlled by the mind. If you're not used to breathing, it's possible that you'll get a little bit lightheaded if you're focusing too much and expanding the breath a little bit too much. If that ever happens, just back off. So this is our first posture, Sukhasana, right? And a lot of times in the practice, the teacher will invite you to set an intention for the practice. And an intention is very different than a goal. A goal might be, I'm going to work on balance. The intention is how you'll move into the practice. So you might say to yourself, I have patience. Maybe you're working to cultivate patience. I have focus. I am present. I am kind to myself. I forgive myself. I mean, it could be anything that you're working on. And it could be, if you don't really have a particular intention, you're just here to move and feel better, then you can say, I am present, or I feel at ease in my body. And as you continue to practice, things will come to you that will make sense for you. The intention helps to guide you. It will make the practice your own. And as the teacher takes you through whatever the teacher is taking you through, you'll filter that through your intention and ensure, and over time practice this, that you're cultivating what you're actually here to cultivate. Okay, so let's come into a tabletop position. I'm going to move all of these off the mat. And in the tabletop position, if your knees don't feel comfortable, you can always put some padding under your knees in the form of a folded towel or blanket. I'm going to do that right now. Hands under the shoulders and knees under the hips. This is a typical posture for cat-cow, which you may have heard of even if you don't practice a lot of yoga. Hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. My arms are long, but I never want to lock out my joints. And especially if you have a lot of flexibility, it can be easy to hyperextend. We want to allow the arms to be strong without hyperextension so that the muscles will support the joints. We don't want to put pressure on the joints. And we'll always move with the breath in the practice. I think cat-cow is a great way to show breath and movement. Before we move at all, let's inhale fully. And again, fill the body with the breath. And then exhale through the nose if you can. Through the nose if you can. The next time that you exhale, so you can inhale here, when you exhale, drop the tailbone and round the spine, coming into a cat stretch. It looks like a cat, right? That's why we call it that. Belly pulls to the spine. So that means you're just squeezing that breath out a little bit. And then lengthen the back. Imagine your tailbone pointing straight back behind you, and then lift the heart. And then you'll move with the breath. The exhalation will take you into that cat posture. And the inhalation will take you into the cow posture, the cow part of the posture. And as you move, matching movement with breath. And as you round, you might feel a nice stretch in the back body. You can take the shoulders away from the ears. And as you lift your heart, be careful not to just sag the body. It's easy to do. And especially if you're tired, that's a lot of pressure on the joints. So you stay with the stability. Belly gently drawing to the spine. That'll give you support in the low back. And then find the cat stretch. So do about 3 more of those with me. Inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, round the back body. Inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, round. And one more. Inhale, lift the heart. And exhale, round. Just pause in your tabletop. If it's comfortable for you to sit on your heels, bring your hips back and sit on your heels. You'll feel a big stretch in the knees. If that's too much stretch for the knees, that's where your block or book comes in. You can put it between your ankles and your knees don't have to flex as much. So that's a typical way that you would be warming the body in a class. And we flexed and extended the spine. And in this practice, brief and kind of basic, we're going to move the spine in all directions. So we just flexed and extended. We'll also move side to side, and then we'll twist, and we'll spend a little more time opening the heart. So from here, We might as well do it. The most famous of all yoga postures, whether you've ever practiced or not, you know about downward facing dog. Let's go ahead and come into downward facing dog now that we've warmed the spine a little bit. To do that, we'll take this blanket away. We'll just move that to the side. From your tabletop, tuck your toes under. Your heels might be splaying out a little bit. Try to bring your heels right over your feet, which will be a big stretch if you're not used to doing this. Hands on the mat, about shoulder width apart, and then inhale here. And as you exhale, lift your knees, engage the belly to lengthen the spine, and find this upside down V, which we call down dog. And if you have a dog, you've probably seen your dog do both down dog and up dog. It's a very natural, nice, full body stretch. There's a lot going on here. Let the heels melt. Let the head hang, elbows a little soft. And this is a very overtaught posture in Western yoga. So you might think it's not a big deal, but it is. So if your thighs or your hamstrings are very tight, you can widen your feet, you can bend your knees. If your shoulders are tight, you can widen your hands, let the head hang. And this also brings the head below the heart. So if it's too much pressure, you're going to lift the head a little bit. So this is down dog. Just feel your way into it. You can even hear my voice changing because my nose is getting a little stuffy with the pressure. So just notice that. And then let's just walk the feet to the hands, which depending on how your hamstrings feel might be very tight, right? So crouch down if you need to, or you can lengthen the spine. So this is a forward fold. These happen a lot as well. And then bring your hands to your thighs. Don't come up too quickly. We want to avoid in the class moving from down to up too quickly because you might get lightheaded. The weight when you're here is balanced between the ball and the heel of the foot, and then we'll go ahead and stand all the way up. Woof. Hands by your side. Now this posture, and I'll turn to face you, you can stay just as you are. Feet under the hips, hips over the heels, shoulders over the hips. This is Tadasana, right? Mountain pose, which you also might be familiar with. And we're never just hanging out in the practice. We're always aware, we're always present, we're always mindful. So feel the breath breathing you here in Tadasana. Feel how the weight is distributed between the ball and the heel of the foot. Let it be even. So if you feel like you're leaning one way or another, try to even it all out. Lift your arches, shoulders down. Good. Arms can just fall by your side. So if you feel like you're leaning forward, that's interesting information. It may not, maybe you're a little bit leaning forward in your posture. So over time, as you strengthen the muscles that support you, you'll come to be more upright, more comfortable in this position. So I'm going to step to the top of my mat. I invite you to do that as well. We'll break down a sun salutation. This is a movement, a fluid movement that's done with lots of variations in lots of classes. Reach the arms up. And as you do, root your feet down. So here we've got extension of the spine, and then bend your knees as much as you need to, bring your hands to the mat. And this is where you'll use blocks or your books if your hands don't make it down to the mat. Good. Lift up halfway. We're working with the breath. The inhale lifts you up halfway and the exhale lowers you down. Let your hands plant, which might mean bending the knees a lot, and take your feet back to plank. Now in plank, typically hands under the shoulders, heels pressing back. If this is too much for your wrists, you'll come to your forearms, right? If this is too much for your back, you'll bring the knees down, right? So you're going to take care of yourself and really listen to your body in the practice. I think that's the most basic of all the yoga basics. And then from here, your elbows will draw back. So there's a tendency to bring them out to the sides. Pull the elbows towards the rib cage and lower down. Roll your shoulders onto your back. Heels of the hands just below the shoulders, tops of the feet to the mat. Lift your heart. This is cobra pose. If this is too much for the low back, gently pull the belly toward the spine or lower down a little bit as you gain strength. And then lower down. From here, we'll come back to downward facing dog. You can come back through a plank, through tabletop, through stretching back, whatever feels good to you, and you'll make your way back into this down dog. Elbows are a little soft. Imagine that your armpits could turn towards each other and just look at each other. Head hangs. Look between the hands and walk the feet between the hands. Good. And then lift up halfway. and fold forward. Press your feet into the mat and reach your arms up and overhead. This is on an inhale. Hands come into the heart. So from here, let's just look at a couple of standing postures and then we'll move into some twists and we'll at least have set the stage for the practice. So standing postures, we'll come into the warriors. There's 3 warriors that are typically done in practices. And the first is warrior 1. Right foot comes right in front of your right hip and the left foot comes behind your left hip. So your pelvis is still pretty level. Oh, I got fuzzy there. Okay, there I am again. Bend your right knee and reach the arms up, shoulders down. Virabhadrasana 1, warrior 1. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about the Sanskrit names. Most teachers will share the names in English, but sometimes it's kind of interesting just to know what they are, right? Virabhadrasana. Vira is the root for hero and Bhadra is the root for friend. So it's kind of your own personal hero friend. Shoulders down. Warrior 1. Engage the belly, bring the left foot in to meet the right, hands to the heart. And then we'll take the left foot forward in front of the left hip, right foot back, sink down and reach the arms up. So this, if your psoas is tight, you might be feeling it here. It might be pulling your tailbone up. Over time, you'll work to find more space, but just to get a feel for that right now. Good. And the breath is steady. We work towards a steadiness and evenness with the breath. And then the feet come together any way that you'd like. Usually in a class, there'll be an instruction about how the feet come together. So warrior 1, you're usually facing the short edge of the mat. Your hips are pretty level. Now we'll come to warrior 2. So you're usually facing the long edge of the mat for this. And I'm just going to spin my right toes to the short edge of the mat. Oh, my left toes. Good. Sink down and reach the arms up. So everything facing the long edge of the mat except for my knee and my toes. And then I'll turn my head to look over the knee, open up the heart. I'm giving a very basic description of this. There's lots more to learn. We can imagine the inner thigh rolling open, and this is usually a tight place for us, so that'll be a place to work. Lengthen the leg, turn the toes in, pause here. Spin the right toes to the right and find warrior 2 on the other side. And what you'll find is one side's quite different than the other. That's the way our bodies are. We're not symmetrical. And we don't want to judge one side as our good side and our bad side. That wouldn't be very yogic. We just want to be present with what is. So allowing yourself there. Good. And then lengthen the leg. Turn that leg in and let's just heel toe the feet together. Just getting a feel for some of the movements you might do in your yoga practice. Warrior 1 and warrior 2. Let's find warrior 3. And we'll start warrior 3 from the same way we started warrior 1. Right foot in front of your right hip, left foot in back of your left hip. I'm going to start with the hands to the hips and just shift your weight to the right foot. Bring your left toes to the mat. This is a balance posture, so it's great to introduce balance here. Lift the left leg up, tilt forward, trying not to lean too much on the right side. Your arms reach over your head. And in all balance postures, you just find a place to rest your eyes. Just look at nothing in particular, but something or some area of your room that won't move. And then just bring your left foot down to meet your right. Like I said, we're just touching on these basics, arms by your sides. And then let's find warrior 1 in the other direction with the other leg in front. Square your hips, lift the heart. Arms reach up. Good. Shoulders down. And then shift the weight to the left leg. Your right toes come to the mat. And maybe one day in your practice, you're like, this is about as much balance as I can do. Then that's what you do. And I know my camera is having a little trouble finding me today. Bear with me here. This is a little bit unusual for the lighting I've got today. And then tilt forward, warrior 3. So I'm just looking kind of out here. You don't want to look at someone else. You don't want to look at me on screen because I'm going to move. You want something that will help keep you steady. And then bring that foot down. Hands to the heart. Good. We come into the practice. Let's go ahead and take a seat on the mat. We come into the practice. We warm the body. Typically, we find the breath. We might use props to help extend our arms or our legs. And after we've done some standing postures, we'll sit back down or lie down and begin to stretch the body, and we might move into some twists, right? So we've flexed and extended the spine. Let's do a little bit of lateral movement and some twists here. So let's take the right hand down to the floor. You can bend the elbow and reach the left arm up and over your head. And you're going to feel space come in between the ribs. Reach the arm up. Root your left sitting bone down. So if that tries to come up, root it down. Open the heart. Good. And then let's bring the hand behind the head and push the head into the hand and open up a little bit. Typically, the back body is not as strong as the front body because we don't do things behind us, we do them in front of us. So we work towards balance in our practice. So strengthening the back body can be very important. Reach the arm up, come back to the center. We're going to turn towards the right again. We're going to move in the same direction. Take your left hand to the right thigh, right hand behind you. My spine is still nice and long. I'm going to turn and look over the right shoulder. And this is a twist. So twist, we really don't want to overdo. A little goes a long way. Shoulders down. The ribs are what's moving. The belly's getting squeezed. The hips and the low back are stable. And that's what we want. We don't want to move and destabilize the low back, but we want to increase the range of motion around the middle, provide a little bit of a massage for our internal organs. And then come back to the center. And you'll notice, come back and just feel how that feels. Notice the energy. Good. And then take your right hand, left hand to the mat, lower down and reach your right arm up. Good. Elbow sinks down. And so we want space in the side body. So if there's a tendency that you feel to lean forward or back, try to resist that and just come right over to whatever your range of motion is, right? We never overdo it. We find an edge in the practice. That's where we know, go ahead and put your hand behind your head, that we're making some change, but we're not hurting ourselves. So it's not super comfortable, but it doesn't hurt either. It's somewhere in between. That's your edge. And you can still breathe evenly. If you're ever holding your breath, you might have gone a little beyond your edge. Good. Come back to the center. Whew. Now we're going to take the right hand to the left thigh, left hand behind, lengthen the spine, open the heart. Look over the shoulder. And this is your twist on the other side. On one side, you'll be able to twist a little more than the other. Good. There's really no way to do this practice wrong as long as you're present, tuned into the breath and aware of what's going on. Whatever you're doing is just a way to explore those things. Unwind and notice how you feel. Good. On to the back, just for a little stretch. And again, this will be practice in not overdoing it. So we've twisted, we've moved the body laterally, we've flexed and extended the spine in cat-cow. Now we'll just get a little stretch in the hips. Hug the right thigh in towards you and take the area just above the ankle, cross it over the left thigh. Now your knee might be very close to you. It might be a little away. This might feel like a big stretch, or it might not feel like much. If it feels like a big stretch, this is where you work. If it doesn't feel like a big stretch, it feels like a little stretch, then you might test, you might test putting a block or a book underneath the left foot to increase the stretch. See how that feels. That might feel fine, or you might say, still not at my edge. Then you'll float the left foot off the block and hold on to your left leg, all of the time moving this right knee away. That gives it a little bit of structure and also a little bit of stretch. Give this a couple of breaths, should feel good. We get pretty tight. This leg, the left leg, nice and relaxed. And then come back to that starting position. Place your right foot down. If you think you're going to use the block or a book, you can just move it over by the right foot. Hug the left knee in. Good. Cross the left ankle over the right thigh. This side might be different than the other. In fact, it generally will be. So you might need something different on this side. Maybe you didn't need a block on this side, on the other side, but you need it on this side. Good. Maybe you pull the thigh in. So find where you want the stretch. Shoulders down. So today we did one way to flex and extend the spine, one way to twist, one way to find that lateral stretch, one way to flex and stretch the hips, couple of warriors, couple of standing postures. There's much, much more. And that's fine. You learn as you go, and there's nothing you need to know before you start this practice. Place your right foot down and then your left foot down. And then just rock a little bit side to side. And the final part of the practice, and really important part, is Shavasana, where you will rest for a few moments and do nothing. So you extend the legs on the mat. And if this feels good for you, you'll stay here. But depending on what's going on with your back, it might not feel good to lengthen the legs. And if that's the case, then you can roll a blanket, place it underneath your knees. And with that, your low back can rest a little bit better on the mat. If you're tight in the shoulders and your chin is lifting up, you might want another blanket. I'll use this one just to show you. You might want another blanket, and you could roll it or fold it and put it under your head. So you'll take some time before we come to Shavasana to make yourself comfortable. So Shavasana, the translation of Shavasana is corpse pose. So it really is the ultimate in just letting go of everything, right? It's practice, right? For just letting go of everything. So this is the time in the practice where we ask ourselves not to do anything and just be with ourselves as we are. So it is a very mindful part of the practice. The body can absorb all the movement that we've done. And this is a very hard part of the practice for a lot of people. We're so used to moving and doing that sometimes this is challenging. Arms can be by your sides, palms face up or face down, eyes closed if that's comfortable. So let's just see how it feels to be here. Let's just do this for a few breaths. Enjoy the quiet, and I'll let you know when it's time to make a change. Deepen and lengthen the breath when you're ready. I'm going to go ahead and sit up, but you stay as you are. Deepen and lengthen the breath. Let an exhalation come out as a sigh. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Reawaken, and reawaken with attention, with awareness. See how you feel. When you're ready, you can reach the arms over your head, stretch the legs long, and then hug your knees in, rock a little bit side to side, and gently make your way back to a seated position, just like we began. And often you will end the class with your hands in this hand position. Hand positions are called mudras. Anjali mudra is just a very connecting, centering hand position, thumbs at the heart. If that doesn't work for you, you can leave your hands in your lap. Often a class will end with the vibration of Om. There are a lot of explanations about this. It is a sound that vibrates the body. It connects a group if you're practicing together. And it is said to be the sound of the universe. It contains all sounds. So it's nice, it feels good. You can always choose to chant or not. And it sounds like this. My mic may lose this a little bit depending on how loud I'm oming. I'm going to ohm a little bit soft so it doesn't do that. Typically we'll inhale and the sound om will come from the belly and leave through the lips. So you might try it. Inhale deeply. Om. And then the class typically will be over. In some classes, the teacher may invite you to call and response, say namaste, which means it's a greeting in India and greeting in Sanskrit. And it really is just, I see you and you see me. It's been translated into very many beautiful things that I think are a little bit of poetic license. The light in me, the best in me recognizes the best in you. But it really is, I see you, you see me. So if that's comfortable, You might say namaste to end the practice, or you can just end the practice. Those are a few basics. So that's all I have for you today. I'm going to come back to the computer so I can turn off the video. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon. Namaste.